hit it. I hear whoop. So I felt like maybe the car tire burst, or the thing I was thinking the girl pouring inside here was jerking. I fell in the ground, started jerking. I must sleep out there from my phone. When I woke up, he pushed me by on the ground. It's like by the time.
When you woke up, he pushed you by?
Yeah. When I woke up, he pushed me by his boy. It's like the boss on here was saying, hitting my leg, hitting my back. So when he pushed me by on the ground, it's like he did it left and then
welcome back, guys.
cutting the leg.
Here with an
I was not feeling it.
on the true crime story of Lucas Richard and Jessica Lloyd, which is currently still unraveling in Liberia in West Africa. If you happen to have chanced on this video, just go back to my playlist and watch the first one so you can have a better appreciation of this second one. This is an update bringing to bear facts that have come out after the first video came out. Now, in the first video, Richard Lucas, or Lucas Richard, the missionary from the United States of America, coming with his indigenous mission group, per their relationship with the Creekside Church, are in Liberia, West Africa, for their ongoing missionary works. And fast forward, he has developed a romantic relationship with Jessica Lloyd. And then fast forward, things go sour, and he's now accused of eventually trying to take her life. You can just go and watch the first video, all that are in there. Now, as at the end of that video, per the facts that were out at the time, there were two narratives of the story out there. Lucas Richard's narrative, which indicates that he had a flat tire and asked Jessica to get off the vehicle with him and pick a motor vehicle back home whilst he repairs the tire, at which point Jessica got knocked by a motorcycle, and when he was trying to attend to her, he got attacked and robbed. That was Lucas Richard's version, and the second narrative was the narrative being spearheaded by the commercial motorcycle rider and the mob that apprehended Lucas Richard, which was spinning that narrative that Lucas Richard was trying to literally behead Jessica Lloyd in a bush, and they chanced upon him and they rescued her from him. So this was the deadlock of the story. Very crazy one. Two narratives which seem to make sense from different angles. But fortunately in this case, Jessica Lloyd is still alive to give her version, just that due to the magnitude of her injuries at the time, she was unable to do so. Unlike murder cases where the where the victim is usually not allowed or even alive to give his or her version of what happened, and we usually have the murderer or the suspect spinning the story and the investigators trying to find the truth. This particular case gives us an advantage where the victim at the center of it, or Jessica Lloyd, is actually alive. And guess what? Now she has spoken. And I said in the last video that I think once Jessica Lloyd speaks, things will become clearer as to whether Lucas Richard is telling the truth or the commercial motor riders and the mob are rather telling the truth. And Jessica Lloyd has now spoken. And you are going to be marveled by what she said and how it unravels the two narratives and who is lying, and in that case, whether Lucas Richard is actually guilty or not. Let's get in. So, Jessica Lloyd has spoken, and this is what she said. Her narrative is actually bringing the narrative from the commercial motorcycle rider into perspective and making it make sense, because it falls in line with what the commercial motor rider said. That consistency is running through what Jessica Lloyd is saying and what the motor rider said. Does that mean Lucas Richard lied? Well, no, technically, because at the same time, it also links the testimony that Lucas Richard gave, or let me say versions of the testimony that Lucas Richard gave. So it sort of brings both narratives together, but across different timelines per how they unfolded, and then with some question marks heading towards Lucas Richards' direction. But enough of the suspense, I'm getting in now. So according to Jessica Lloyd, after everything had transpired with the miscarriage and everything, and Lucas Richard was now getting ready to leave Liberia the next day, he came to her and decided they should hang out and spend some last days together. All this has been accounted for in the first video. You can go and watch for the details. So from that point of the hangout, Jessica Lloyd suspects she might have been given something by Lucas Richard because she seemed a bit off, and they took off again in his car. Just that this time around, Lucas Richard told her that he wants to take a pee, but he's going to do it in the bush, and he needs to take a knife with him just in case they see a snake or a wild animal. Does that make sense? Well, I leave that to you to let me know. So that was what he said, and he took this knife, kept it in the car, and they took off. Now, when they got to the bush where he was going to allegedly take that pee, he got out of the car, took the knife. Obviously, then he should go alone and just pee, right? But he asked Jessica to accompany him. Who does that? That was the first red flag, if not the second. They entered the bush, and he was acting funny, according to the story. He took his pee all right, but there were people around. And then afterwards, he got back into the car. They moved, still driving along a bushy road. They got to another part of the road, which was bushy and didn't have much people around. And then he got out of the car again and said he wants to pee. At which point, Jessica Lloyd was like, "Come on, man, what's going on? You just took a pee some few seconds ago." And he said, "Well, I still want to pee again." And he still asked her to accompany him into the bush again, which she did. It is very important I mention at this point that Jessica Lloyd is just 21 years old. I add just because of the age gap between himself and Lucas Richard. Lucas Richard's age is not clearly known, but it is obvious he is very old. I see him to be either in his late 30s or maybe even in his early to mid 40s. He might almost be twice her age. So you can see that naivety on the part of Jessica Lloyd. And I think that Lucas Richard probably had been taking advantage of this. That's how come we got to where we are now. Probably, of course. So they got down. She accompanied him into the bush, and he started sort of trying to pee. Now, at this point, according to Jessica's testimony, there weren't a lot of people around, and Lucas was acting a bit off. He told her to turn around because there was something on her neck so that he helps get it off. And then he said they should get back into the car. They got back in. They started driving again. Then they got to a secluded area. And this time he didn't say he wanted to pee. He rather said that he thinks the tire has a problem. So they got out of the car and he said he was going to try and change it. Then he said that there's something around her neck. She should turn around so he helps her get it off. She didn't really see anything around her neck, but out of that blind trust and naivety again, she just turned around for him. And it was at this point that Lucas Richard is reported to have hit Jessica at the back of the head with the tool with which he was sort of pretending to be working on the tire. And according to Jessica's testimony, she thought the sound was so much she heard a huge bang and she felt it resonate and re-echo in her head and her mind. She felt or she thought the tire had burst. Little did she know she had actually been hit on the head so hard, she was just concussing. And in that state, Richard allegedly dragged her into the bush, and then he got on top of her and started cutting her throat. But per Jessica's account, she is saying that she felt that Richard was actually trying to help her out of the dilemma in which she was, because of herself, she felt that loud bang, and then she felt something off. She couldn't feel any pain, she couldn't feel anything. And I think that was probably adrenaline that had kicked in because she was concussed. That is what I think. I'm no medical guy though, but she couldn't actually feel what was happening. But then she saw the blood spilling from her neck as Richard was doing what she was doing. So at this point, you can see that the stories seem to come together. The commercial motorcycle rider is talking about the fact that he saw her hit her on the head. He saw him hit her on the head and got on her and started trying to slide or slit her throat. And then Richard is talking about the fact that he was traveling with her and he had a flat tire and he wanted to change the tire. You see, those bits come together in the account of Jessica Lloyd, but the timeline's a bit different. Just that other versions of Lucas Richards' story are not showing in Jessica Lloyd's version, because he is talking about the fact that he asked Jessica to get out of the car, and then Jessica got knocked out by a motorcycle and he went to help her. But Jessica does not talk about a motorcycle knocking her. She talks about Richard telling her there's something on her neck, she should turn around and he will help her get it off, at which point she heard a loud bang. Now, this is where things get crazy, because I think that this story creates a deadlock. The fact that certain versions of Richard's testimony are not showing in Jessica Lloyd's version does not necessarily mean outright that Richard is guilty and he's lying. And the fact that almost all the versions or certain key versions of Jessica Lloyd's testimony falls in almost perfect sync with the testimony given by the commercial motorcycle rider and the mob also does not necessarily mean that is all that happened and Lucas Richard is at fault. Because one, it's possible, or it can be argued, let me put it that way, it can be argued that when Jessica Lloyd turned around, the loud bang she heard was the motorcycle actually hitting her. I doubt that though, but sometimes in the court of law, it's about what you can prove. There hasn't been any mention of any CCTV cameras capturing all these issues at any point. I know in my country, Ghana, we've done so well. We have a lot of CCTV cameras on the road and by the roadside, and if this was here, maybe depending on the region or the town, it could have been caught on camera. I don't know about how things are in Liberia though, but like I said, there's no mention of any cameras catching this. So it becomes your word against their word and what the police can prove or what the investigations can unravel. And it becomes deadly here because some people are also thinking that Jessica Lloyd has a genuine love for Lucas Richard because it's alleged they got married. I'll get to that bit. But based on that genuine love, she doesn't want to give him up, and she's probably limiting certain versions of her story so that it's not an outright lie, but it's also not an outright truth, which could end up exposing Lucas Richard. Because per my investigations, it turns out that they are actually married. Lucas Richard went ahead to do a traditional wedding with Jessica Lloyd. And I told you in the first video that here in Africa, you don't necessarily have to do the courts and then the white wedding and all just to be married. You can just do a traditional customary marriage and you are good to go. And that there's a pictorial evidence, a photo evidence showing that at a point in time, Lucas Richard and Jessica Lloyd actually did that. So it means that Jessica Lloyd is now officially the wife of Lucas Richard. So she's his second wife. And if that's the case, then the terrain begins to change because there is now a possibility that Jessica Lloyd, as a second wife, may now be trying to twist her story or withhold some key versions of it in order not to implicate her now husband, Lucas Richard. If that's the case, then we all have a problem on our hands because justice might actually be evaded. What is happening in this scenario now for the parties involved? Now, for the wife of Lucas Richard, for me, I think that all this that has transpired is enough for her to make a decision on the future she would want to have with her husband. On the part of Lucas Richard, honestly, I have no advice for him. I think his shame should speak to him. But on the part of Jessica Lloyd, I don't know if these speculations are true that she might be trying to cover up for her now husband or not. But if they are true, then my advice for her is that she should just come clean and expose this guy. You have only one life and he tried to take it away from you. But if they are not true, then I'll just say that sorry to her, and it's unfortunate she had to go through this, and it's understandable she might not remember everything, especially since she got hit on the head. She is not necessarily saying she got hit on the head by Lucas Richard. She's just saying she had a loud bang and couldn't feel anything. And at a point, he saw Lucas on her. She felt he was trying to help her, and she saw blood coming from her neck, but she can't readily confirm if Lucas was the one inflicting the knife mark. You see how dicey the case is? So that's hope that when she wakes up and she speaks, everything will become clear. Is still suffering because she is awake and she spoke, but the story has just gotten more messier. I don't know how investigators are going to get to the bottom of this. Maybe somebody will crack and admit something or take back their initial story and give a second version of it, which will then unravel the case for the truth to come out, or other things will play out that are not yet in the open public for us to know. But for me, if you ask me, I think that Lucas Richard was up to something very diabolical. And I'm also hoping that the security forces, the Liberian government, would also put its feet down and do the needful. This is likely to be an international issue because it involves an American and a Liberian. And I'm expecting that the two countries would give the rule of law a chance to play out in this case, so that whatever transpired is established and whoever is culpable is allowed to face the rigors of the law. Is that going to happen? If you think so, let me know. If it's not going to happen, if you think so, let me know. And if you think it's not going to happen, let me know why you think it's not going to happen. To leave you, I'm adding the testimony of what Jessica Lloyd said. The full video testimony will follow after I end my reaction, and you get to hear it for yourself. It's worth mentioning though that because of her Liberian accent, some of you might not fully appreciate everything she says. You still get the English though, but bear with me in case some of it is not so clear for you, but I've summed it up in my delivery though, if that is enough for you. So I'm still following the case, like I said. As and when there are updates, I'm going to bring them to you. But if you ask me, I think that Lucas Richard has just messed himself up. He was here in Africa to spread the word of God, but he ended up spreading the legs of a woman when he is actually married. That is a shame. But hey, everybody has weaknesses, right? We fight our demons every day and we hope that we win. Subscribe if you are yet to do so. Turn on post notifications, and like I've always been saying, keep an eye out. Now, let's go on to watch the full account of what Jessica Lloyd said as far as this case is concerned.
So then he said, certain place around the city market, sir, trial market, so straight now. Saying ended food Yeah, he went and the other interpretation that he said they been there before they went down to the water side to go see the river. But it's like when you know to do it for me, that you mean water. Although when we went there, the grown-up boys there, you know, they see where me they want their money. So he said he missed the road, so they directed him in the play. But the chain was behind us. So he couldn't do anything but first before we get out from the car, he took out the net, big net. He said, you know, I fed a snake, so in case one see snake, then we'll kill it. And laugh with it, I expect you know. So we get out from the car and put the net in your pocket. After we go to the river side, the people were playing there, so we couldn't do anything. So they thought, when it's so kind of bush area, he said, you know, the people. It's the bush, but the bush around, but the poor people.
The same this way,
Yeah, in banana field on the other side, the bush get go road patient area. Drive my guess. So he said, you know, the poor people. And I said, okay, let me go to the water bottle and the poor people. But after people, they say, you see some animal in the bush. That they put it never in your pocket. So when he said, oh, can't see what I saw the animal, seeing only the animal, the abortion. I said, myself, scary. I just stood up behind him, but it's the one going to go close on you, just want to give me with them. So I just stayed behind him. When he finished peeping here, I said, wash your hands. So thank you, I'm going to listen to it. I said, yeah, wash your hands. After I finished, I hold in the bottle. When he comes somewhere, he said, you don't pee again, someone will push it. So he said, oh, stay behind me small, going to the small train will be passing around. And I stood right behind him, but not too close. So when he finished, I would look for the direction and play the car where we were in the car. We came.
So you park the car, okay, you walk.
Yeah, we were not going to show all the people start going and said, if we forget about the place, he missed the direction. So that after that, we were in the car. And we went to the road that leading when you coming from Simako way, when you coming inside of the road on the other side, so that the road will keep back way. And then we go back again. Yeah, we go back again on the same road to patient shop with in the estate. Go on that side, then we're going to the other side, the road you can tell the road to the other side. And the road we're going on. So all the crowded places, he passed by the place. I said, oh, but we can find player and say, I toss money, so, we found other places, and person on bridge and all that, telling me about the bridge. But before then, we saw the cemetery. He said, oh, I don't know if you got license like the airport, so now I am going to go to the cemetery to go see the grave, the name, the time the people die. I said, no, I won't go there. I said, no, I feel I won't go be seeing grief. So I went from small. And then the bush grew on up like there. Nobody was there. Nobody said no answer. But this time, it's like the boy washing or everything when he parked the car. So when he parked the car, he said the car tire had problem. They wanted to fix it or to change it. And I said, okay, I was sitting in the car at first. So when he got down, and then he said, oh, Jessica, I think you need to help me. So he brought the other iron outside, like maybe 10 minutes. Then he had the other take, no iron in him. So he said, just be 10 minutes and then I can finish with the other side. I said, okay, I'm not thinking on anything. So I was 10 minutes. He said, what's that in your head? So he opened up in my head. He opened it up. I felt like he was cleaning the dirt. So he hit it. I yelled, whoop! So I felt like maybe the car tire burst, or the thing I was turning, the girl pouring inside it, I was checking. I fell in the grass, I started checking. I must sleep out there from my phone. But then I woke up. When I woke up, he pushed me by on the ground. It's like a time.
When you woke up, he pushed you by.
Yeah. When I woke up, he pushed me by his voice. Like the boss on here was saying, hitting my leg, hitting my back. So when he pushed me by on the ground, it's like a time he did it left and then he was cutting the leg, but I was not feeling it. He gave me medicine. At first, I took infection medicine or I my stomach in the car, so I told him. Because I was pregnant almost 2 months and then gave me injection in my vein. Also kind of medicine. So we should take it all together for it to stop the inflammation and the malaria. So it's better one. So I take the infection medicine to clean it. And then I said, oh, my stomach, it hurting. So he gave me some kind of medicine. He said, well, I'm going to sleep it. So I take it. So I took the medicine in the car before everything. So when he hit my ear first, I was checking. So when he came over me, I felt like he won't hear me. So I said, alright, because I was still checking. I said, alright, just give me. I stood up, he pushed me back on the ground. He pushed me and rolled me down small. But the kind he was chopping the leg. So it's like the boss saw him, I was saying. So that's why he really go deep. So the boy picked up the stake from far away. The boy said, hey. So he just left me. But I know how all the cotton tape play on my hand. Because when he pushed me down, I was fighting. You know, I was not fighting him to say, oh, give me, you know, for any harassment or anything. I was just telling him, I was just telling him, I'm already here. So when he heard me first, I just feel like the quarantine entered in him. Because he said he was like, checking what was going on. I think because I was checking, so he said he was checking when he was Sunday Monday out checking. So I felt like the current was still in me. That's my head. I had a heavy son. I don't know how.